Hello and welcome to this tutorial. In this discussion, we shall look at the solution to the recent numeracy examination. Before we proceed, make sure you click on the subscribe button, like, and share this video. Let's proceed to the question. Now, we shall consider the number 1 first. That was very simple. Let's proceed further. Now, Araba saves 1 cedis 20 pesos every day for 42 days. She is saving to buy 2 textbooks, each costing 27 Ghana cedis and 15 Ghana cedis respectively. How much money will she have saved at the time of the 42 days? That was for 2 marks. What amount of her savings will be left after buying the 2 textbooks? Let's look at the B. The mean score of a group of students in a test was 9. When one student's scores was added, the mean score became 8. Find the score that was added. That was also 6 marks. Solution. Let's target the first one, the 1A. We shall be answering the amount of money she must have saved at the end of the 42 days, and of course the amount of her savings that will be left after buying the 2 textbooks. Now, amount saved for 42 days is simply going to be equal to 42 times 1 cedis 20 pesos. Remember, she's saving 1 cedis 20 pesos every day. Alright, so you have to multiply the 42 by the 1 cedis 20 pesos. Now that simplifies to 42 times 120 over 100. Of course, I hope you know that 1.20 can be expressed in fraction as 120 over 100. And simplifying, we can simply write 41 over 1 times 120 over 100. Now we are going to multiply fractions. And normally, I advise that do not always try to simplify this fraction or the fraction here, because it is easier to divide when the denominator is 10, 100, 1,000, and so on and so forth. So now, when you multiply the 42 by 120, you come up with the answer 5,040 over 100. Alright? And of course, dividing by the 100, you just realize that just count the number of zeros down there, and of course, jump twice. Because the zeros here are 2, so if you just jump twice, the point is going to lie between the 0 here and the 4. So that simplifies the entire thing to 50 cedis 40 pesos. So in other words, the amount she must have saved for 40 days is simply 50 cedis 40 pesos. Let's target the second part, II. What amount of her savings will be left after buying the 2 textbooks? Now, the cost of the textbooks is simply 27 Ghana cedis plus 15 Ghana cedis if you add the cost of the 2 textbooks. And what do you get? You have 42 Ghana cedis for the cost of the 2 textbooks, because when you add 27 Ghana cedis to 15 Ghana cedis, you get the answer 42 Ghana cedis. Now, the amount that will be left is simply going to be equal to the amount saved minus the cost of the textbooks. So, in substituting, we have 50 cedis 40 pesos minus 42 cedis. And when you subtract, you come up with the answer 8 cedis 40 pesos. Remember, this can be done with your calculator as well. Now let's proceed further. The mean score of a group of students in a test was 9. When one other student's score was added, the mean score became 8. Find the score that was added. before I solve this question, I have a little advice for you. It's always good you follow the mathematical procedure regardless of whatever situation you find yourself. And please, if you have duly followed the mathematical procedure, the answer you have gotten does not matter. Let it be the way it is. Because sometimes the questions they set might not be realistic. Okay? But that does not mean that we cannot solve them using mathematical procedures. Now let's come to the solution. The mean, that's x bar, is simply going to be equal to sigma x over n. In other words, summation x over n, where summation x is the sum of all the data values and n is the number of values in the data set. Now, given the mean to be 9 and of course the number of students to be 20, that is letter n, and substituting, you are going to have 9 is equal to sigma x or summation x over 20. And now, multiplying both sides by 20, we get the expression sigma x or summation x is simply going to give us 180, because at this side 20 divides out 20, leaving our summation x as you can see here. And again, 9 times 20 gives us 180. So what does that mean? It means that the sum of the scores for the 20 students is 180. Remember, the mean score is one unique score that, assuming everyone had the same score, that would have been the score. Okay, so if you are going to find total score, we rather multiply the number of students involved, alright, by the mean score. That will also still give us the total score they all had. Now let's proceed further. Now let the score that was added be y. Okay, the additional score that was added be y. And now the new mean would be summation x plus y over n plus 1. Why? Remember, the new score is going to be added to the total score of the 20 students. That's why we are saying that summation x plus y. In other words, the total number of scores for the 20 students plus the additional score, which is the y we have introduced. And now that also increases the number of students in the class to n plus 1. Okay, in other words, additional student, one student has been added. So it's now going to be n plus 1. And now, substituting the values, they said the new mean was 8. Okay, we are simply now going to have 8 is going to be equal to 180 plus y over 20 plus 1. I hope you know why I'm saying 20 plus 1. Now, the number of students now become 21 because one additional student has been added. Okay, let's proceed further. Now, this now simplifies to 8 is going to be equal to 180 plus y over 21. As I said, the number of students now increases to 21, as you can see in the denominator here. And now multiplying both sides by 21, we are simply going to have 8 times 21 is going to be equal to 180 plus y over 21 times 21. And that simplifies to 168 is simply going to give us 180 plus y. Now what do you see? At the right hand side, 21 here divides out 21, leaving our 180 plus y. Then 8 times 21 simply gives us 168. Okay. And then next, subtracting 180 from both sides, we are simply going to have 168 minus 180 is equal to y, because when you subtract 180 from here, you have 0, leaving only the y. And then if you subtract 180 from this, of course, this expression can also be written. Now that simplifies to y is equal to negative 12. I hope it is now ringing the bell when I was telling you that there are some questions that are not so realistic. And now we can therefore say that the new score that was added was negative 12. Come to think of it, is this actually possible that a score of negative 12 can be gotten by a student? If it is possible, please kindly leave it in the comment section. I'll be so glad to know, because I am trying to think so hard how this can be possible. I don't know whether we can also borrow marks and end up owing marks or not. So please, if you have any idea how this can be possible in a real life setting, please leave it in the comment section. I'll so much appreciate it. So basically, that was the question 1. I hope it was quite clear and enjoyable. Don't forget to click on the subscribe button, like and share, and please, when you subscribe, click on the bell icon so that anytime a video is uploaded, you'll be the first to be notified. Now let's come to the second question. NTC/GTLE Numeracy October 2021 past question. That's the theory question 2. Now this was the question number 2. They said the graph shows how Kojo ran to a shop, spent some time there, and then walked back home on a given day. Use the graph to answer question 1, question I, and I. Okay. Let's go to our computer generated images. Now, this was the question. I think this was the diagram that was given. And this was the question. The graph shows how Kojo ran to a shop, spent some time there, and then walked back home on a given day. Use the graph to answer I, and I. And then now the question was, what is the distance to the shop from the house? That's 1 mark. And I, how much time did Kojo spend in the shop? That's also 1 mark. Now, how much time did Kojo spend on the journey home? That is I. That was also additional 1 mark. Now let's come to the solution. Tackling the first question, what is the distance to the shop from the house? Now let's introduce our graph again as shown on the screen. Now, if you look at the graph carefully, the vertical axis represents the distance from home. And then the horizontal axis represents the time in minutes. Okay? So, at the start of the journey, he started at the point 0. We can say that the point 0 or the origin is simply his home. And he moved till he got to a stop. Now, where did he stop? He must have stopped at where? The shop. So this point you see here represents his stopping point. Now, this kind of questions are just easy because you just need to trace from the graph. Now, if we drop a horizontal line, alright, intersecting the vertical axis, we can read from the point 0 to that particular point. And I realized that this particular graph for the vertical axis used a scale of 200 meters to 2 centimeters if it was actually on a real graph sheet. Alright, so if you look at it critically, from 0 to this is 200, then here 400, then in between the 600 and the 400 would be an additional 100 that we are supposed to add to the 400 here. Okay, and what would that mean? If you check critically, this is going to simply be 500 meters, because from 0 to this particular point, or the midway between 600 meters and 400 meters, is simply going to be 500 meters. So in other words, the distance to the shop from the house was simply 500 meters. I hope that is clear. Let's move to the second question and consider it from there. Now, how much time did Kojo spend in the shop? Let's introduce our graph once more. Now, we said that this was his first stop, and that must have been his arrival at the shop. Now, normally when reading time graphs or travel graphs, horizontal lines or horizontal part of the graph simply represents a state of rest. A state of rest. And that is for when you are using a distance time graph. So from this point here to this second point you see here simply represents the duration he must have rested. So what do? We simply have to trace this particular points to the horizontal axis. And when you do that, okay, you are simply going to have, that means that he might have started resting from 2 minutes to where? 7 minutes, because this point you see here actually lies between the 6th minute, and of course the 8th minute, and that is in the middle of that. So how would we get the time? Okay, what would be the time from 2 minutes to 7 minutes, as you can see here, because this actually represents 7 minutes. Remember, the scale also used here was 2 centimeters to 2 units, if it was actually a real graph. So from 0 to this place is 2, then here to this place 4, then from here to here 6, then here to here 8. But the line or the measurement did not reach 8, so we have to just simply read from the 2 minutes to the 7th minute that you can see right here, because after 6 you get to 7. How do we get the time? This is rather very simple. We simply have to, so the 7 you see here, we simply subtract the 2 from it, because within the first 2 minutes he was walking, so we take that time out of the 7 minutes we have here. So that simply gives us 7 minus 2, giving us what? Of course, 5 minutes. So in answering the question, how much time did Kojo spend in the shop, we can simply say that he spent 5 minutes in the shop. Now let's tackle the third question. How much time did Kojo spend on the journey home? Introducing the graph once more. A return journey normally have what is called a negative gradient. Alright? Look at it. It slopes downwards. That means that it has a negative slope or a negative gradient. So once again, this was his point of return. This was his point of return here. Okay? And again, when you trace down, that means we are going to be reading from the 7th minute to where? The 12th minute. Okay? What does that mean? It means that in terms of his return journey, the starting point to the 7th minute isn't relevant. In other words, within time 0 to time 7, he was either moving to the shop or even resting at the shop. Okay? So that will simply mean that we will have to determine the time from the 7th minute to the 12th minute. Okay? And here again, you've got to realize that we can actually trace from this particular point to this side or to the 12th here to get our time. Okay? So that is going to simply imply that the time he spent in the shop is simply going to be, we'll subtract the first 7 minutes from 12. Okay? Why? Because within the first 7 minutes, he was either resting at the shop or moving to the shop. Remember, he used 2 minutes to move to the shop, rested at the shop using 5 minutes. So that makes the first 7 minutes that you can see right here. So the remaining time you see here must have been the time he returned. Alright, so when you trace downwards, you have 12 minus 7 minutes. And that also simplifies to 5 minutes. So in other words, Kojo spent 5 minutes on the journey back to the house. I hope this is very clear. Okay, I hope you actually enjoyed this presentation. And please, if you are enjoying it, don't just watch, subscribe please. Subscribe because our channel is still at an infant stage. And leave a comment so that when we become big, in the annals of history, you'll be one of those who contributed to its growth. Now, let's target the third question. Please, before we proceed, make sure you click on the subscribe button, like and share. And please, when you subscribe, click on the notification bell so that anytime we post a video, you will always be the first to be notified. Now let's proceed to the question. Question 3, the theory question, the same NTC numeracy. Third question, theory. Now this was the third question. Okay, this was the third question. Let's read. 3A. A conference room floor measuring 8 meters by 12 meters is to be covered fully with a carpet. Find the area to be carpeted. Alright, and B. A child solved the subtraction task as follows. Now this was how the child solved it. Now the question was, what did the child do wrong? And I explained how you would solve the task correctly. Let's target the first question, number 3A. A conference room floor measuring 8 meters by 12 meters is to be covered fully with a carpet. Find the area to be carpeted. Solution. If it is a conference room measuring 8 meters by 12 meters, then that particular conference room must be a rectangular one, or the floor must be a rectangle. And you know, area of a rectangle is simply equal to length times breadth, where length is the longest side and breadth is the shortest side. Now that will simply imply that we have 12 meters times 8 meters. And when you multiply 12 meters by 8 meters, you simply have the answer 96 meters squared. So we can therefore conclude that the area to be carpeted is simply equal to 96 meters squared. Let's come to the second question. A child solved the subtraction task as follows. 212 plus 169 gives the answer 157. Look at the child's solution critically and guess what the child did wrong. Okay, let's focus on the question now. What did the child do wrong? Now, let's look at the solution. If you observe in the solution, the child subtracted the bigger digit from what? The smaller digit, regardless of the order of what? Subtraction. Okay? For instance, at this place, the child subtracted 2 from 9 instead of 2 minus 9, which would have required that you borrow 1 from this side, making it 12 before subtracting. The child didn't do that. Now in the second part, you get to realize that the child also subtracted 1 from 6. And the last one, 1 from 2, which is actually wrong. Okay? So, in writing, what did the child do wrong? So you realize that the child subtracted smaller digits from the bigger digits instead of subtracting the digits of the second number, that's the subtrahend, from the first number, which is what? The minuend. Okay, so the child was not following the order of subtraction, simply put. Let's target the second part. Explain how you would have solved the task correctly. Now, solution. So if this is a question, what would you have done? So normally questions like this involve you give a step-by-step guide in addition to providing the solution as well. So number 1, we remove 1/10 from the tens digit of 212 and add it to the ones digit, making 12, and then subtract the 9 of 169 from it, giving 3. What does that mean? We remove 1. This one, when you remove it, it will be left with 0. Then you bring it to the ones column. That makes it to a 12 ones. Now 12 ones minus 9 will simply give us 3 ones. That is what the first step is simply talking about. You remove 1/10 from the tens digits of 212 because you can see that this is the tens column, this is the hundreds column, and this is the ones column. So you first of all remove 1 from the tens column and add it to the ones column because we cannot subtract 9 from 2. Okay, so that's the first step. Now the second step, you remove 1 from the hundredths digit of 212 again and add it to the 0 tens left behind, making 10 tens. That's what 10 tens is simply 100. Subtract the 6 of 169 from the 10 tens, resulting to 4. What does that mean? We remove 1 from the hundreds column of 212. Alright, when you do that, 1 will be left, as you can see at the top. Now the 1 removed goes to combine with this one here to make it 10 tens, because this is the tens column. Actually 10 tens is actually 100. So 10 tens minus 6 tens will give us what? And that will be 4 tens, as you can see on the screen. Now for the third step, you finally subtract the 100 of 169 from the 100 left behind in the 212 after the removal of the 1. This gives 0. What do we mean by that? Because 1 is now left here and 1 is left down here. So 1 minus 1 simply gives us 0. Now the final answer is then 43 as illustrated above. So this is our presentation, and I hope that you got everything right. Don't forget to click on the subscribe button, like and share this video to all those who wrote it so that they can cross-check. Perhaps it will be of use to them so that they would know their standing in the just ended numeracy examination. Thank you for your time. Stay blessed. More tutorials will be coming soon. For those of you yet to write, subscribe, click on the notification bell so that anytime we start uploading videos or we post any video, you will be the first to be notified. Thank you for your time. Goodbye.